There are days when you wake up and it feels like life is pushing you to your absolute limit. Your plans collapse, someone you trusted turns their back on you, and everything you worked so hard to build disappears in a single moment. You pretend you're fine, but deep inside, you're breaking. And the hardest part isn't the setback itself, it's the fear that you're too weak to take one more hit. But here's the truth most people never dare to face. Pain doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to forge you into the strongest version of yourself. If you've gone through storms like this and you're still trying to stand, comment 1, because what comes next will show you why pain is the beginning of power. There are moments in life when no matter how prepared you think you are, life still strips everything away in a single blink. No one warns you which day the storm will hit. It arrives when you're trying your hardest, when you feel the safest, when you finally believe things are starting to fall into place. Then suddenly, a hit from the place you least expect knocks the air out of you. Someone you trusted turns away. A project you spent years chasing collapses. A single careless sentence cuts deeper than a knife. You feel like the whole world is against you. You try to act calm, pretend nothing is wrong, but deep inside, you know you're falling apart. And the most painful part isn't the event itself. It's the feeling that you're too small, too fragile, too weak to survive one more fall. There were days you looked in the mirror and didn't even recognize yourself. You saw the tired eyes of someone who has tried for too long and still hasn't reached the place they hoped for. You kept telling yourself you were okay, that if you just pushed a little harder, things would finally get better. But pain has its own way of whispering the truth. You're not okay. It seeps into your thoughts and into every breath, forcing you to ask questions you don't want to ask. Why is all of this happening at once? Why does life hit me again the moment I get back on my feet? Why is the person I trusted the most the one who hurts me the deepest? And the hardest question of all, why is this happening to me? Those questions hang in your mind, heavy and exhausting, until you just want to give up. But here is the truth most people never dare to face. Life is not targeting you. It's not punishing you. Life is simply doing what life always does, throwing you into the fire to see if you can rise from it. The Stoics understood something that most of us run away from. Adversity doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to reveal you. It shows you whether you've built your life on rock or on sand. It shows you what truly matters, who truly stays, and who you really are when everything you relied on is taken away. Epictetus was once a slave. He couldn't choose where he lived or how others treated him, but he could choose how he responded. From the most painful experience of his life, he discovered a truth. People are not harmed by events, but by the way they interpret them. That isn't just a nice quote. It's psychology. It's neuroscience. It's the foundation of human emotion. The more you magnify your pain, the more it consumes you. The more you resist reality, the more it drains you. The more you run, the harder it chases. Pain is not something you avoid. It's something you face head on if you ever want to break through it. Think back to the darkest chapters of your life. The moment someone you trusted betrayed you. The moment you failed at something you poured your whole heart into. The moment you lost something you thought would always be there. You thought you'd never rise again. You thought your world had ended. But look at you. You're still here, still breathing, still moving. Maybe slower, maybe not as strong as you'd like, but more durable than you realize. And when you look back, isn't it true that those exact moments shaped you, deepened you, sharpened you. That's what the original message wanted to show. Resilience isn't a gift. It's not something you magically have. It's built in every crack of your heart, in every fall to the bottom, in every moment you thought you couldn't take another ounce of pain, but survived anyway. Strength is never born in comfort. It comes from the days you rise with trembling legs and blurry eyes, but still choose to move forward. It comes from the battles you fought in silence, the nights you cried alone, the moments no one saw, yet you kept going. Stoics don't romanticize pain. They don't tell you to love it. They tell you that if you run from it, you will stay weak. But if you face it, if you accept reality as it is, you will discover a strength in yourself you never imagined. Resilience is the ability to look at the ruins of what used to matter and say, I will build again, and this time I'll build stronger. Life doesn't require you to be unbreakable. It only asks that you don't quit. You don't need to be strong all the time. You just need to keep your hands on the rope that pulls you out of the dark. And in the end, your darkest moments will become proof that you're far tougher than you ever believed. You were born to be stronger, deeper, and more grounded. And if today you're facing something that makes your chest tighten and your heart ache, understand this. This is not the end. It's just the next test. If you're in the middle of a storm right now and don't know how to escape, comment 1. If you've walked through storms and come out stronger, comment 0. To remind yourself how far you've come, and to remind someone else that they're not alone. There's a truth most people run from. Pain doesn't just wound you, it exposes you. It strips away the image you built, the titles you earned, the confidence you wore like armor on peaceful days. When the storm hits, you can't hide behind strong words. You can't smile through the tears. You can't use logic to silence the ache in your chest. Adversity shows you who you truly are. And if you've ever lived through a big enough blow, you know exactly how brutal that truth feels. The question, why is this happening to me, always appears when you hit rock bottom. It's not a foolish question. It's a question of someone lost, someone trying to find logic in a world that often has none. Life doesn't need a reason to strike. It doesn't care how hard you tried, how kind you were, or how much you've already carried. It doesn't pause to check whether you're tired or overwhelmed. When it's time to test you, it does it with cold precision. And that's why the real question should be, why is adversity necessary? Why can't people grow in peace? Why does life use pain to teach the most important lessons? The answer isn't for those seeking comfort. It's for those willing to face reality. Nothing trains the mind like being thrown into a situation you didn't choose. Adversity forces you to examine your values, your purpose, your beliefs, your foundation. In the moments when everything inside you feels like it's collapsing, one thing remains: the truth of who you are. Stoicism never claims adversity is pleasant. It simply says it's essential. Without hardship, you never develop resilience. Without loss, you never learn appreciation. Without betrayal, you never discover who truly stands with you. Without failure, you never build the courage to try again. Strength cannot be forged in comfort. A steady heart cannot be built in warmth. And true character cannot be formed on a smooth road. What makes adversity so important isn't its cruelty. It's the simple fact that it's the only environment where real change becomes unavoidable. People change only when they can't continue as they are. When the pain breaks past your threshold, when something shakes you so deeply that life cannot go on the old way, that is the moment you truly begin to grow. You can claim to understand yourself, to know your strength, your principles, your values. But only adversity reveals whether they're real. Anyone can talk about patience until life forces them to wait in uncertainty. Anyone can talk about kindness until they've been betrayed. Anyone can talk about courage until they face a pain no one can rescue them from. Adversity is the one test that never lies. It doesn't care about your image. It only cares about your actions when you're pushed to the edge. This is why Stoicism sees adversity as an invitation to see the truth. Because truth, even when cruel, sets you free. It exposes your weaknesses. It burns away your illusions. It destroys the expectations that were never real. It knocks down the structures you thought were solid, but were only temporary. And when everything collapses, it forces you to rebuild from the ground up, this time stronger, wiser, and more grounded. There's another reason adversity matters. It protects you from becoming fragile in a world that never stops being harsh. Modern life is comfortable, but comfort breeds fragility. One criticism can ruin your whole day. One small failure makes you want to quit. A slight disruption in your plans leaves you spiraling. We live in a soft shell of convenience, so the moment something falls out of place, we feel shattered. And that's why life sometimes breaks the shell, to remind you that you weren't born to be delicate. Adversity is also where you learn to control your mental state. In your worst days, you no longer have the energy to fight the world. You only have enough strength to choose how to respond. When you can't change the event, the only thing left to change is your perspective. And when your perspective changes, your inner strength transforms. The strong aren't those who feel no pain. They're the ones who feel it deeply but refuse to let it dictate their destiny. Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's standing tall, even while shaking. You never truly know your power until being strong is the only option you have left. And there is an even deeper reason adversity matters. It's the place where you are reborn. People always say opportunity hides in crisis, but few understand that the real opportunity doesn't lie in success. It lies in collapse. When everything you relied on disappears, you're given the chance to rebuild a better version of yourself. When your heart breaks, you learn to love yourself more fiercely. When your trust is shaken, you learn who belongs in your life. When life takes away what you assumed you needed, it opens a door to what you were meant to become. Adversity also sharpens your awareness. It reveals everything you couldn't see in calm times. It exposes the people who only stand beside you in the sunshine. It shows you who stays when the night comes. It reveals where you've placed too much trust, in emotions, in others, in things you never controlled. Only when you're pushed to the edge do you finally see the difference between what you want and what you truly need. And ultimately, adversity matters because it builds inner strength, the only thing no one can ever take from you. Success fades, money disappears, relationships end, reputation can crumble overnight. But inner strength, once forged, stays with you for life. It's what lifts you when the world hits you again. It's what keeps you calm when everything around you shakes. It's what separates those who fall apart from those who rise. Adversity is not pretty, it's not gentle, it's not comfortable, but it's real, it's necessary, and it always has a purpose. Not to break you, but to show you the power that has been inside you all along, waiting for a storm big enough to bring it to light. There are moments in life no one prepares you for, moments no one teaches you how to handle, moments no one warns you about. They arrive in the places that feel the safest, in the hours that seem the calmest, And because of that, they hit harder than any fall you've ever taken. It's not the world outside that collapses. It's the world inside you that gets torn open without a single sign. Maybe you've lived through an afternoon like that. Everything felt normal, so normal that you believed today would be just another ordinary day. You were sitting in a familiar room, the late sunlight painting soft orange streaks across the wall. The fan was humming gently. Everything was peaceful enough for you to believe life was finally being gentle with you. And then in one instant, a message, a phone call, an offhand comment, and your heart dropped to a depth you didn't know existed. Or maybe it was a late night when the whole city was swallowed by silence. You lay in bed trying to fall asleep, but your mind was spinning like a storm that refuses to fade. Outside, the night was dark, but inside you, it was darker. The small room suddenly turned into a sealed box, trapping you with thoughts that had no exit. The walls were the same, the ceiling was the same, but everything felt like it was closing in, pressing on your chest until you couldn't breathe. You looked around, no footsteps, no voice, no arms to hold you. Just you and your pain sitting across from each other in the dark. Maybe it was a morning when you stepped outside feeling fine, only to realize minutes later that this day would mark a turning point you never wanted. The flow of people, the noise of traffic, the smell of coffee drifting from street shops, all the familiar things suddenly felt foreign. It was as if you were walking through the world in your own body, but your soul had been left behind somewhere. On a crowded avenue, surrounded by thousands, you felt the most alone. Adversity doesn't always arrive in dark places. Sometimes it shows up in crowded rooms, in the middle of a meeting, in the middle of a conversation, even while you're laughing. The places where you think you're the most stable are often the places where you get shaken the hardest, because those are the moments when your guard is down, when you believe everything is fine, when you're not holding your heart with both hands to protect it. And then there are moments that are even more haunting, moments not tied to a room or a street, but to memory itself. Places that once held happiness, the cafe where you spent hours dreaming with someone, the street you walked together on a sunny day, the room you thought would hold years of peace. Those places turn into monuments of what you lost. Not because the spaces changed, but because you changed. Sometimes adversity shows up in a cold office where you're told the job you dedicated years to is no longer yours. The pale neon lights, the dry smell of paper, the hurried footsteps. Everything blurs for a moment. You stand there clutching the paper that rewrites your future, and it feels like the floor beneath you dissolves. The world keeps moving, but your life stops entirely. When people talk about when and where adversity happens, they often imagine dramatic events, accidents, losses, breakups. But the truth is, adversity rarely chooses dramatic moments. It chooses the smallest ones, the most ordinary ones. It comes when you think you've finally found a little peace, when you're sipping tea, doing laundry, sitting in a dull meeting. It comes when you least expect it, because life doesn't need perfect timing to shake you. It only needs you to be unprepared. And where is not just a physical place. It's the place inside you that is the most fragile. It's where you feel lonely even around loved ones. It's where you feel exhausted while pretending to be strong. It's where you feel not enough, even when everyone praises you. When life wants to teach you something, it never hits your strengths. It hits your weakest point, because that's where the growth needs to happen. The Stoics understood something profound. The setting of your adversity always reveals something about you. If it arrives in loneliness, life is teaching you to stand on your own. If it arrives in love, it's teaching you not to lose yourself. If it arrives in your job, it's teaching you that you are more than your title. If it arrives in your family, it's teaching you to grow beyond your old expectations. Whenever adversity strikes, it hits the place where you are not yet strong. And it arrives in the most ordinary moments to remind you that no place outside of you is truly safe, except the inner peace you've built within yourself. Someone may once believe their room was a refuge, but sit there one night and feel loneliness swallowing them whole. Someone may think a busy street could distract them, but still feel invisible among thousands. Someone may believe their job anchors them, but still be swept into emptiness when everything collapses. So the when and where of adversity aren't about describing external circumstances. They're about understanding that life doesn't choose convenient moments to test you. It chooses necessary ones. It chooses the place where you're most likely to break, not to shatter you, but to teach you how to stand straighter. Once you grasp this, adversity stops feeling random. It starts feeling precise. It starts feeling instructive. It starts feeling like it arrives exactly when you need to change to live the life you're meant for, not the life you're trying to hold on to. Adversity shows up in the most ordinary places to remind you that strength is never about avoiding storms, but about standing firmly even when the storm appears in the room you thought was the safest. And it arrives in calm moments to teach you that real peace never comes from circumstances. It comes from the inner strength you build within yourself. There's a truth most people don't want to face. Pain doesn't disappear on its own. Time doesn't magically heal anything. Silence doesn't help you forget. And emotional wounds don't close just because you pretend to be strong. You can bury them deep, drown yourself in work, force a smile, stay busy enough to fool the world. But sooner or later, when you're alone in a dark room, everything you've been running from will return, sharper than before. Pain doesn't fade. It waits until you're tired enough for it to strike again. And this is why so many people live exhausted. They don't know what to do with a heart that's still bleeding inside. So how does someone who's hurting actually rise from adversity? How do you turn pain into strength? How do you get back up? Not in a forced, fragile way, but in a way that makes you wiser, deeper, and more resilient? This is where Stoicism offers the most practical, cutting through the darkness actions. Not pretty quotes, but principles sharp enough to pull someone out of their lowest point. The first truth, one most people refuse to accept, is this: you must allow yourself to face reality, even when it's brutal. People suffer more not because adversity is too big, but because they build a false version of it. They say, "I'm okay," when everything inside is cracking. They say it's fine while their chest is in chaos. They cling to the illusion that if they ignore the wound long enough, it will somehow heal. But truth doesn't vanish just because you turn your back. The more you avoid it, the tighter it traps you. Stoics don't run. They look directly at the reality and call it by its name. If you were abandoned, acknowledge it. If you failed, admit it. If you're hurting, say it. No real strength is ever built on denial. Next, you must learn to separate the event from your reaction. This isn't empty philosophy, it's deep psychological practice, and Epictetus saw it as the core of resilience. When something happens, it carries no meaning. You are the one who assigns meaning to it. A criticism is just sound. A rejection is just an action. A failure is just a result. But your mind turns them into humiliation, worthlessness, collapse. You hurt not because of what happened, but because of the story you told yourself about what happened. Change the story and you change your outcome. Change your perspective and you change your emotional reality. And when your emotions shift, your inner strength shifts with them. Stoicism doesn't teach you to think positive. It teaches you to strip away illusions. It says this is just an event. It happened. It is not a life sentence. You are not a failure just because you failed once. You are not worthless just because someone didn't choose you. You are not broken just because you fell. Reality is simple. You are hurt, but you're still alive. You are wounded, but you still have choice. You have lost something, but you still have the power to rebuild. And the moment you understand the boundary between the event and your mind, you finally become capable of moving forward without collapsing. The third Stoic step is not passive acceptance. It is acting on what you can control. This is where most people go wrong. They pour their energy into things that don't belong to them. They try to change someone else's feelings. They try to hold on to what's already gone. They try to control the outcome instead of controlling their effort. They grow exhausted not because life is cruel, but because they're aiming their strength at the wrong targets. Stoics ask one question everyone should ask daily. Do I control this? If the answer is no, let go. If the answer is yes, take action. Your choices are the only real possessions you have. The next principle, rise slowly, intentionally. Many people think healing means snapping back instantly. They force themselves to be strong overnight, to prove to the world and to themselves that they're fine. But real strength doesn't come from tightening your jaw. It comes from persistence. A resilient person is not someone who never falls. They're someone who takes a small step every day, even when it's shaky. One deeper breath than yesterday, one clearer thought, one small act of kindness toward yourself. Healing isn't a dramatic moment. It's a series of small decisions repeated until your heart stops trembling. Stoicism also teaches an art few practice, the art of letting go of what no longer belongs to you. Pain often lingers not because the wound is deep, but because you're gripping too tightly to what has already ended. You hold on to old hope, old questions, old versions of someone, old versions of yourself. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is recognizing reality and understanding that moving forward is the only way not to stay trapped in the past. The weak hold on out of fear of emptiness. The strong release because they know they deserve what's next. Another Stoic principle, you must become your own anchor. When everything falls apart, you discover a truth that's both harsh and liberating. No one can save you but you. Comforting words may get you through a night, but they can't carry you through life. Warm arms may ease your loneliness, but they can't heal you. Friends can listen, but they can't live your life for you. Self-reliance is the foundation of resilience. You only become truly strong when you no longer depend on the world to keep you standing. Most importantly, Stoicism teaches you to face your pain from the inside out. You cannot heal by overpowering emotion. You must walk into it, sit with it, speak to it, touch the deepest part of it, the place you're afraid of, the place you've avoided, the place that has chained you for years. Only when you enter your own darkness do you uncover the light that leads you out. Strength doesn't come from the light. It comes from the courage to walk through the dark. And ultimately, a person overcomes adversity only when they turn suffering into purpose. Stoicism doesn't ask you to endure for the sake of enduring. It asks you to use what broke you to build something stronger. Pain stops being a wound. It becomes fuel. Failure stops being the end. It becomes experience. Loss stops being emptiness. It becomes the space to create something new. When you tie your pain to purpose, you don't just get back up, you rise. And if you're still reading this, it means there's a part of you that wants to change, to stand, to step out of the old wound. If that's you, comment 1 if you want to grow stronger, or 0 if you're ready to begin again. Not for anyone else to praise you, but for you to see yourself choosing to move forward. One small choice, but the first choice in turning pain into power. There is a moment anyone who has walked through real pain will eventually recognize. The moment you look at yourself and realize you've changed in ways you never imagined possible. What's strange is that this change doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't happen in the nights you cried until your chest hurt. It doesn't appear in the hours you fell apart. It doesn't bloom in the instant you hit rock bottom. It comes on an ordinary day, during an ordinary act, drinking a glass of water, stepping outside for air, or catching your reflection in the mirror. Suddenly you realize your heart doesn't tremble the way it once did. The pain that kept you awake for nights now lives only as a faint scar. Not because it vanished, but because you've grown strong enough that it no longer controls you. That is the first result of resilience. You are no longer as fragile as before. Something inside you has shifted, not into cold hardness, but into quiet steadiness. You no longer fear the things that once sent you into panic. Minor storms no longer knock you down. You feel the world is still full of chaos, but you don't move with its chaos anymore. Your peace no longer lives outside of you. Your peace lives inside. Another surprising thing happens. You begin to see clearly what you couldn't see when you were hurting. When you were still inside the pain, you believed the world was against you. But when you step out of it, you understand the world never had the time to be against anyone. Life simply moves the way it moves. And you realize that the things that broke you were never meant to destroy you. They were meant to push you toward a stronger, wiser, more honest version of yourself. You start to understand the value of endurance, not the quiet suffering of suppression, but the kind of endurance that teaches you what to hold on to and what to release. You realize that not everything that leaves your life is a loss. Sometimes it's clearing the path. Broken relationships reveal true character. Failures show you the roads you walked not out of desire, but out of fear of change. Betrayals teach you not to give your trust to the wrong places, and through it all, you learn the most important skill of all, seeing life with clarity instead of emotional distortion. As you grow stronger, you feel a new kind of freedom, not freedom from pain, but freedom from fear. The fear of being abandoned, the fear of failing, the fear of not being enough, the fear of losing everything. These fears once made your world small. They made you shrink, tiptoe, hold yourself back from your own life. But when you rise from your lowest places, you realize, if you survive that, you can survive anything. This confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It sits quietly in your chest, deep, steady, unbreakable. The greatest result of resilience is that you begin to live more truthfully. You stop proving yourself. You stop wearing masks. You stop shaping yourself into what others want. When you've survived a real storm, you stop fearing the rain. You no longer live to avoid pain. You live to actually live. You understand life owes you nothing, and you also understand you don't need life to be gentle in order to be peaceful. The most powerful reflection comes when you look back at the pain you once thought would end you. What used to feel like a period now looks like a comma, a turn, a shift in tone, a transition. You begin to see that what you once mourned as loss actually led you somewhere your old self wasn't ready for. Some people leave so you can return to yourself. Some doors close so you're forced to look for better ones. Some wounds push you backward only to gather momentum to leap forward. When you look at who you are now, you see the change in how you respond to life. You're calmer. Events no longer pierce you the way they used to. Words that once shattered you now pass through you. Failures that once paralyzed you now serve as information. You no longer build your identity on expectations. You build it on inner strength. And in this moment, you finally understand what Stoicism has been teaching all along. Real strength is not about feeling no pain. It's about refusing to let pain decide who you are. And whether you want to admit it or not, pain eventually teaches you gratitude. Not gratitude for what happened, but gratitude for the person you became because of it. You're grateful for your weak moments because they showed you you needed to be strong. You're grateful for endings because they made space for beginnings. You're grateful for your tears because they washed away your illusions. And you're grateful to yourself because you didn't give up. When you reflect on it all, you understand something profound. Life never takes without giving back. But the gift it gives isn't always easy to open. Sometimes it's wrapped in suffering. Sometimes it's covered by loss. Sometimes it hides behind despair. But when you're finally strong enough to unwrap it, you realize the gift was exactly what you needed: growth, clarity, calm, and a resilience your old self never had. And in the end, you understand the most important truth of all. Life doesn't change because you're in pain. It changes because you change. Not for anyone, not for approval, not for expectations, but for yourself. When you rise from where you fell, with a heart once broken, now fused back together with stronger material, that is no longer just strength. That is rebirth. And that rebirth is the final, greatest result adversity wanted you to reach. When you look back at everything you've been through, one truth becomes undeniable. It wasn't success that shaped you, nor luck. It was the moments that nearly broke you, the nights you wanted to give up, the days you could barely stand. Pain forced you to grow. Time taught you to breathe again. And somewhere between the two, you found a version of yourself that is stronger, deeper, and more honest than ever before. Resilience doesn't come from avoiding storms. It comes from learning how to stand in the middle of them, shaking but unbroken, choosing to rise even when rising hurts. So tell me, what do you believe creates a resilient person? The pain they've endured or the time they've had to heal?